Welcome to Across the Dietary Universe, a podcast where we bring experts along our voyage to discover the secrets of food and how it relates to each of our unique dietary profiles. From the origins of diets to current eating trends to the frontier of food innovation and the future of how we eat, we'll discover that when it comes to food, things are not necessarily as they seem. Honeycomb is a mobile app that works with your iPhone or Android device to help you find suitable food to eat at restaurants near you based on your specific dietary requirements. If you're plant-based and celiac, low FODMAP with a tree nut allergy, keto and dairy-free, we support countless dietary combinations and profiles. Based on your inputs, Honeycomb curates the best restaurants for you and the best options to order at those restaurants. If you have more severe allergies, don't worry. Honeycomb only recommends you places that have a clear protocol to deal with cross-contamination. Pre-order Honeycomb today at get.honeycomb.ai. Kortney, it's so nice to have you on the show Across the Dietary Universe. Let me introduce you, give you a proper introduction to our listeners. Kortney Kwong Hing is the co-founder of Zestfull, an online community that celebrates life with food allergies. Kortney is a co-creator of the online community Allergy Travels and co-host of the Itch podcast. Kortney has known food allergies since she was 4 months old, and now she shares her expertise on handling multiple food allergies, asthma, eczema, and oral allergy syndrome. She shares her beliefs that you can have a full life with food allergies and enjoy food, travels, friendship in your own way. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is really cool. It's cool to connect with another Canadian.
That's right. That's right. We were just talking about, I was sharing with you that I have ulcerative colitis, which is, I spent some time in the hospital and so on. You mentioned that you have some people that you know with colitis. Did you want to get into that a little bit more? And then we can maybe touch on your story a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking, it's so interesting. I feel like there's a lot of crossover in a lot of different people's lives. So people with celiac disease, people with ulcerative colitis, people who have to avoid food like we do with food allergies. But sometimes I feel like the conversation gets halted because the food allergy community is yeah, but it's life-threatening for us. So one bite could kill us. But at the same time, one of my really good friends is celiac, and the long-term damage that her body is going through every time she meets a little tiny micro dose of gluten,
right.
it's just a totally different conversation for you guys, because it's you're dealing with it every day, and we're anaphylactic. So if we avoid it, we're okay. But if you have a flare-up, this is a long-term experience for you that you don't know what's going to happen to your body afterwards. So I think it's so great that you're starting this conversation between these communities, and that we can learn so much from each other and we can really support each other. Because I don't think that we should all be on these journeys alone.
Yeah.
We're all fighting against the same kind of pushback from, the restaurant industry, that let's have that conversation and let's try and find a way to be a community of people who need to just avoid food for some health reason.
Yeah, well, that's very well said. We have to look at this in a sober fashion. Why hasn't this been figured out yet? Right? I say this to investors all the time. It's 2021. Why are we still if we have to go to a restaurant, we have to download a PDF, we have to zoom into a PDF on our phone, we have to manually parse through information. We most of the time, that information that we're looking for is not there. Ingredients aren't disclosed. So you have to ask the restaurant, and then, you have a little disclaimer at the bottom of the menu that says, oh, well, if you have allergies, actually, JK, this menu is not really for you. Call the restaurant, email the restaurant, and venture at your own risk. Now, my understanding was that we're going to Mars soon, but we still have a PDF menu. So to me, the reason why this has been held back for so long is because we all have tried to accomplish it in our own little bubbles. People with peanut allergies are fighting in their own way. People with shellfish allergies are fighting in their own way. People who are plant-based are fighting in their own way. Celiac, fighting by themselves. We all have, our separate battles that are going on, which are all very worthwhile battles to fight, but they aren't effective. because you're hitting it from too many different directions, so it loses its power. What we're doing at Honeycomb is connecting everyone together. When you put them all together, it becomes very significant. If you combine it with all of the other dietary restrictions together, and you have people with dietary restrictions, all of a sudden we're like 38% of the population. Now that's impressive, right? And now we got some oomph. We need to be together. And I think that resonates with you as well.
Yeah, I think it does. I think that as a community, we need to learn from each other. When we talk, your industry is a little bit like, I like to push back on you guys a lot, because I know that the restaurant industry, I've had multiple conversations, and we actually had a panel discussion on Zestfull about this, about whether restaurants need to cater or should cater to people with dietary restrictions, because there's a difference between someone on a keto, gluten-free, paleo diet versus someone who's going to actually have a medical problem eating that food.
That's right.
And I think what's happened to the restaurant industry is people come in expecting to be treated the same with their keto diet as someone who's anaphylactic to soy. And that's where the conversation is tricky when we try to clump in all of these different diets. And it's like, you need to differentiate whether it's a health issue or whether it's a lifestyle choice, because we don't want people thinking that our health condition is a lifestyle choice, because then it's not treated the same.
Right.
And restaurants are a little bit upset, every time someone comes in and says, I'm allergic to this, and then they're eating off the plate of their significant other,
right?
Where it's like, obviously you're not allergic. So then they're not treating any of us safely or, happily, because they're just not sure if we're just being specific. And so I think that's the one conversation that gets tricky, is nowadays diet trends are just insane everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're not diet trends, dude. Like, if I could eat peanuts easily, then I would totally do it, but I can't. And no one wants to go to the hospital tonight.
I think that's, and I 100% agree with you. And that's something we faced over and over. As far as it being my industry, I'm just here solving a problem. My industry is probably just you talking too much. That would be my industry. But I'm here solving a problem because it affects a lot of people. And the reality is, I've had restaurants tell me, I don't want people with allergies because it's going to turn my restaurant into a hospital. I've had that verbatim. Restaurants tell me that. I've had restaurants tell me that we put allergens into our food on purpose to keep people with allergies out. Legit.
Okay.
Legit.
Yeah.
I very much on the front lines have seen any number of reactions like that. And the only way, I think, where stupidity and ignorance, of course, we have to deal with that. And if someone thinks that a keto diet is on par with a severe food allergy that sends someone to anaphylactic shock, it's an education issue, right?
Yeah.
When people get educated, Kortney, people get educated when there's a financial incentive to get educated. If there isn't, if there isn't, they're going to stay, right? And so that's what we're trying to do, and say, okay, well, you know what? If you disclose all ingredients, if you disclose all protocols, we can match you up with the right people to come to your restaurant. You don't necessarily have to implement protocols to accommodate, people with celiac or people who need to prevent cross-contamination of shellfish, for example, right? But if you're a vegan restaurant, that puts you in the category of being a shellfish-free location, right?
Yeah,
or a dairy-free location. So I want to get more about you, so I'm going to stop talking about Honeycomb soon. But but what we're about, just for the listeners, is that, we want to be where restaurants are comfortable. And there's a lot of good restaurants out there. There's a lot of good restaurants, but hey, what is their current mechanism, their channel to let the world know that they do have protocols for certain allergies, that they do accommodate for certain diets, right? There isn't sort of a standardized way that sort of deals with everyone. And furthermore, as a final point, what happens if you have a peanut allergy, but you are on a keto diet? What happens if you're vegan with a tree nut allergy? Like, good luck going to a plant-based restaurant that doesn't have some sort of like a cashew-based cheese, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of when you have these like comorbidities, if you will, or you have these co-diets and restrictions, that's where it gets really tricky. It's like you have to maybe use 3-4 apps to get the answer that you're looking for and cross-check against them all to see if you have any results. So I don't know if that clears up, I guess, where we stand. But we're just trying to like be as pragmatic as possible.
I think what you were saying was really cool. Like, if you just put it all out there at the beginning, then people can make that informed decision before walking through your front door. Whereas when you come through the front door, you sit down, you start talking to the waiter, that's where that conversation gets tricky. But if you can vet wherever you eat, which I think a lot of people with food allergies do, then you can figure out, okay, this is a place I can have that conversation with. And I know that they're going to be comfortable serving me and they're going to accommodate my dietary needs. I think that's cool, is that you're nipping it in the bud. So it's like you answer before they even ask the question.
Yeah. And of course, you know, everyone's going to have the conversation anyways, and we encourage people to have the conversations. But if restaurants know like, hey, this is going to help, you know, add a punch into my marketing and it's going to help me access this 38%, I might be a little bit nicer. My servers might be a little bit nicer if we weren't already. I mean, everyone, the standard should just be a kind person and not say snarky comments and stuff. But unfortunately, we live in the world that isn't, kind is not the top priority usually. I wanna jump into your background and a little bit more about you, Kortney. And I never do this, by the way, at the beginning of the podcast, talk about what we're about so much, but I guess it's interesting for you and our listeners. So thank you for indulging me in that.
Oh, no, totally. I know. I tend to like ask too many questions when I'm on a podcast. So, oh, no, I'm supposed to talk about my story. But what about you?
Yeah.
It's probably because I also have a podcast.
That's
and
right.
So I'm used to being on the other side of the table.
That's true. That's true. I think you're the first person that I've spoken to here that has their own podcast as well, or at least a very active podcast at least. So I want to talk about the 90s. And your parents tried to get peanuts banned at your elementary school. And things got a little crazy. Can you tell us about that story a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the details. My mom and dad didn't clarify as much as I would love to know. But what I do know is basically, I grew up in the 90s. So I was born in 89. And I was diagnosed with a peanut allergy really, really early on. So we knew that I had multiple food allergies by the time I was 4. But I had anaphylactic reactions to peanuts. So we knew peanuts were like the one that I definitely 100% need to avoid. And we were navigating the world kind of by trial and error. I didn't have an EpiPen because that wasn't something that was standardly given to people like me. But my mom tried to get peanuts banned from our school. It would just make her life easier. And it was just a conversation that she wanted to start having. So she went on the PTA. She was the president of the parents board of our school. She did all of the possible things. She fundraised. She was, like 100% into our school with the goal basically of getting peanuts banned. But if she had enough clout within the whole PTA politics, she thought maybe that would help her be heard. The problem is that people honestly did not believe in a peanut allergy at that time. They thought she was a little crazy. They were like, she can't die from a peanut, because they were common. No one talked about peanut allergies in the early 90s, but like talking 94, 95. That's not something that everyone knew about. And they just thought she was like a little bit cuckoo bananas. So she got so bullied by people, and people did not believe her. And she was treated like a crazy person. And it was insane. And you know what? After 6 years of struggle, she never got the peanuts banned. I always knew that she had issues with the PTA, but I had no idea as a kid that the issue was that they didn't believe that I had a peanut allergy, and no one wanted to do anything to accommodate my allergy. Wow. So now we look back and we're like, wow, peanuts are banned. I mean, unfortunately, Ontario, it took a death to make peanuts.
Hold on. I didn't know that peanuts are banned in schools, because it wasn't when I was growing up either. So when did that go into play?
Oh, I don't know the year, but it's called, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not like mixing up laws now, but I think it's called Sabrina's Law. I have to double check. Okay. Please tell me if I'm wrong, listeners. I feel like there's so many new laws.
We can comment on it. They can comment on it. It's okay.
But be easy. Yeah, so someone had passed away from a peanut allergy in Ontario, and in all elementary schools, I'm not 100% sure about high schools and middle schools because this happened after me. Yeah. They banned peanuts. So peanuts in Ontario are pretty much not possible to bring into schools. Right.
Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense given the severity of it in children. And I mean, who knows what can happen in elementary school. And that makes a lot of sense. Frankly, I'm okay with banning peanuts anywhere. In other areas, like on a plane and everything, is that an issue, like in terms of the parts per million in the air, if it's like circulating or something for you? Or is that for like super, super severe people?
So I heard, and we talked about this on our myth busting podcast on the Itch, and what they told us, or what Dr. Gupta said, was that the protein in a peanut, and I'm not a doctor, so please don't take this as advice, but what I've heard is that the protein in peanut is really heavy, so it doesn't get airborne very easily. But in a plane, if everyone's like popping open a bag of peanuts and it's like everywhere, then that's where you can be concerned, because everyone's like opening a bag, and the air pressure will help that whole airborne situation happen. But otherwise, peanuts are really are heavy, the protein, so it's not necessarily something you should be too concerned about breathing in. I know that some people say they're airborne. I know that for me, the smell of peanuts kind of like triggers an anxiety response.
Right.
So there's that, and anxiety looks very much like an allergic reaction. You know, your heart starts racing, you can start sweating. Some people get stressed and, you know, get urticaria, so hives. So your response can look very much like an allergic reaction, but it could just be a panic attack by being in an enclosed space with an allergen. So that's kind of like the tricky place of peanuts on planes. Luckily, there aren't that many peanuts on planes anymore. They're just generally from people who bring them on. So it's never been too much of a concern for me.
Got it.
I've almost been kicked off a plane a couple of times
because
I disclosed my food allergy. So I've become a little bit more hesitant
Wait, hold
on
up.
saying something.
Hold up. They wanted to kick you out because you disclosed your food allergies?
Yeah, because I was a potential liability.
That's horrible. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
It would be on my shoulders. Oh, I think they have pretty good fine print, these airlines.
Wow. I don't know if the fine print would hold it. That's horrible. And so how did you maneuver that situation?
The one time my dad was with me. I was a teenager, and he flies a lot, so he's a super elite flyer. And he used his clout to get someone higher up to call the person and tell them that they have to let me on the plane, and it's our own liability. And then we had to sign a form.
Was this like an international? Was it like an international flight?
Yeah, we were flying from Toronto to California.
Okay. Was there like a meal or something that it was an issue for?
Well, they serve tree nuts, warm tree nuts on business class. And we asked if they could not do that. And we had brought popcorn and all of these other snacks to replace the peanut snacks. And
for everyone.
They refused to.
Hold on, for everyone?
We brought like little bags for everyone. Like, we were prepared for this because I had just experienced a really bad anaphylactic reaction. So I had a little bit higher anxiety level at that point. So we were like, okay, we're going to bring everyone a packaged snack to replace these stupid nuts. And
why is that so cute? Why is that so cute? You came and brought all these little snacks.
Like, no.
That's really funny. That's thinking outside of the box. I really like it. But of course, they'd be like, no, you can't do that.
No, they weren't feeling it. They're like, people need their nuts.
Yeah, people. This one guy, he comes on our airline just for these nuts.
These warm nuts make his week.
Yeah. We're not going to compromise the business class. Well, that's I'm happy that you were able to get through that. It sounds awful, but it sounds like that's probably not even the worst experience that you've had in social situations. Like, I can't imagine, and I can also imagine simultaneously that it's awful, but I'm sure you have things well beyond what I can even imagine. Like, growing up with friends, probably going out, people are going to a restaurant, you can't go to the restaurant. Was that the theme growing up, or did you have friends that were very accommodating and you would get to pick?
I kind of avoided eating out situations. So now in retrospect, I think the problem was that I avoided too many situations, you know? Yeah. So my social life struggled. Yeah. Maybe you could say that as a teenager, because I just wanted to avoid anything that was awkward. Because I was super awkward, and awkwardness just made me even more awkward. So it was like, let's just go home. So I would rather avoid these situations. I find now that I'm an adult, it's a little bit more challenging, but I have really supportive friends. You just have to surround yourself with people who get it and who know that, you know what, they can eat their pad thai tomorrow. And aren't we just hanging out? Let's just hang out somewhere that's safe instead of make it weird and have me just sit there and drink a tea. Or we just meet for coffee, you know? So we make it work nowadays. And I think that as a teenager, I should have just tried to make it work instead of just run away.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, there would have been some risks to take as well if you're, you know, trying to make it. So maybe it happened for the best anyways to give you a bit of a buffer. Of course, you look, we all had awkward years as teenagers. I think no matter how you cut it, nobody looks back super fondly. Maybe there's few and far between, I would say. Don't look back and cringe. But do you have now some favorite restaurants that you go to that you know these are the ones that are safe?
Yeah, at home. So back in Berlin, I have a couple of places that I go to. You know, the pandemic changed a lot of things. So some places like popped up, some new places popped up that we're going to try. Some favorites disappeared. Also, the level of accommodation has changed a little bit. But I do have like a go-to list of maybe 4 or 5 places we know. They know my chef card. They know my allergies.
Right.
Some of the owners have allergies or dietary restrictions themselves, so they get it.
Right.
But we've had that conversation enough, and I think that they see me all the time there, and I'm like, "You're one of the safe places," so they're always pretty happy to see us there.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing for sure is when somebody with severe or any form of really dietary restrictions finds a place they can go to and finds the items they can eat. I mean, you're just repeating that over and over again. I think I say that people with dietary restrictions are the most loyal customers that exist.
Yeah, 100%.
And can you give, because I don't think it started, like when you moved to Berlin, how long ago was that?
8 years.
8 years. Okay, so when you got there 8 years ago, you didn't have those 5 restaurants. You probably had some others that you had to work through, right?
Yeah, so I mean, things change all the time.
Right.
So I have like one place that's kind of been around since we've been there, and the chef himself has a lot of dietary restrictions and food allergies.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool when I figured that out. But otherwise, yeah, things fluctuate.
Did you have ones that you went to that you no longer go to?
Yes, I have a few. The more you talk to people, the more you dine out, the more you realize that, oh, this might not have been so safe, or they just change their wait staff, and the way that they treat you changes. And that's just, I don't want to have a bad dining experience. I don't eat out a lot.
Yeah.
And so when I do eat out, I would want it to be as harmonious and as relaxed as possible. So I'm not going to sacrifice.
So what gave you
feeling slightly uncomfortable?
What gave you the uncomfortable vibes or the sketchy vibes?
When you just feel like they're frustrated with you, or you feel like you're a burden, or you feel like you have to triple check with them. Be like, did you understand it? Did you talk to the chef? And like, we got it. When someone says, oh, I've got it, no worries, then I'm like totally worried.
Yeah.
Because it's way too relaxed, and I don't think they registered the conversation we had just had. So when they're a little bit too nonchalant, or when they don't listen, there's that interaction where you're like, this person is not clocking anything that I'm saying. Like they're waiting for the cigarette break or something like that. Then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to eat here tonight. I just don't feel safe.
Right.
And maybe we won't come back if that's the waiter who's always going to be here.
So it's an understanding, but also reiterating that back to you and communicating effectively that gives you the confidence.
Yeah, exactly. Like there needs to be an equal exchange. It can't just be me talking at them.
Right.
I want us to have a conversation just so that you understand, because you're going to be the one who has to have a conversation with the chef.
Right.
And then when they say, oh, let me just get the chef, I'm like, beautiful.
Is that above and beyond? Like what's the above and beyond experience for you that a restaurant could give you to make you just 110% sure, even though that's probably impossible?
I've had a couple of good experiences where they've asked the chef to mark up the menu so I always dine out with an allergy card.
Right.
So it's a card that has all of my allergens on it. And when I'll take the allergy card back, and then the chef will take my allergy card and their menu and mark up the menu of what's not safe, what they can do to the dish to make it safe. So you get this like kind of custom design menu for yourself at the end. They're like, well, we can't do this as a side, but we could do this as a side instead. And it's like, you could have come out and we could have like a 2-minute conversation, but instead you went through the whole menu, which is amazing. So I've had that happen a couple of times, and that's something that I totally appreciate. And you just know that they know exactly everything that's in every dish. Because sometimes you have a fear of like, what's a homemade sauce and what's a purchase sauce?
Right.
What side did you actually make and what side did you buy at the metro yesterday.
Right. Yeah. Fair. So that's like a real-time ingredient verification and item verification. And that, I mean, yeah, that makes sense that would be the best move that a chef could do to make you happy. Okay. Well, here's a question out of left field for you. I'm curious to know your answer because things are progressing. We are a podcast about food and technology. So not just food, not just dietary restrictions, but where things are going. And I'm seeing, on a very frequent basis, there's a blog called The Spoon for anyone who's interested in food tech. I don't have the exact URL, but if you just search The Spoon, food technology news, they have really cool news that's coming out. And so how would you feel about a restaurant that's operated entirely by robots? And let's say it's like a pasta restaurant, okay? Bear with me. It's a pasta restaurant and you just input exactly what you want. Let's say it's like a tagliatelle, carbonara, or something like that. Whatever it might be, you choose it, and then a robot delivers it to you, to your table, or to somewhere for you to pick it up. And they say it's allergy safe, and they say it's allergy free, and you don't need to worry about cross-contamination. How do you know, and how do you feel about that?
I have this very mixed feeling, and I feel like it would be quite safe because I feel like everything would have a QR code, and so the robot would know. So the error that would happen would be the human side of loading all of the food into the situation that the robot works in.
Okay.
So in one regard, I feel like that's good, but then there's that conversation of what happened before the food got into the kitchen. If there's like pre-made things or sometimes when you fill food into certain containers, that's where cross-contamination or cross-contact can happen. So there's all these little small nuances of how did everything get prepared before the robot touched the food. That would make me a little concerned. So I like having that conversation. You never know if they've changed spontaneously one of the ingredients that day.
Right.
Like maybe the robot doesn't know that and they just happen to be of the wrong shipment and they're like, whatever, we'll use that oil. It's fine, but it might not be a safe oil for you. So there's all these little things that make me really stressed out by the fact that I can't talk to someone.
Right.
And that a robot can't go in and check and make sure that all of these things are still the same as the last time I ate there, maybe if I've eaten there before. So in one regard, the robot makes me really nervous because you can't have that conversation and it can do its robot-y things,
Right.
It knows what to do, but thinking outside of the box is not necessarily the strength of a robot. But at the same time, I feel like a robot would be really clean. So I like the idea of a robot being like, here's the little square thingy that I put in the little circle thingy. So I feel like the process of the robot would be super good, but it's everything that happens before and after, before.
Got it. That's interesting. So I didn't expect that answer. I thought maybe you wouldn't trust the robot, that the robot could have some faults in it, but maybe we're at a stage where, we're going into a flight these days and the pilots are really just there for takeoff and landing. The rest of it, even to turn the plane, and most people don't know, they just turn a dial. They're not even moving to turn the plane. They just change the heading with a little dial, and then the whole plane moves. So, I mean, I guess we rely on automation for so much these days that maybe that's the reason why you're trusting the robots to do the job. But you're like, well, humans, I don't know how you're going to prepare the robots.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the robot knows what it's doing. This is my mind. I don't know anything about these robots, but in my mind, it's the robot knows it has to do A, B, and C to get your plate to the table. But anything that happens before that, that's where the error can happen.
Right. That's fair.
The robot doesn't know who or what pasta has been loaded into it. It just knows it has to boil it.
Right. And so let's say they wanted, because this is a real business, by the way, and I'll link to it in the description. I just don't have the name offhand. But let's say they decide, okay, we are going to be allergy friendly, and we're going to have some sort of a mandate, some sort of a protocol. We will let our users know that it's not just by chance that it's allergy safe, that it's consciously allergy safe. Would just a communication effort be enough to convince you? Or would you need to have the supervisor there to double check that very day?
I feel like I would need to have to walk through the kitchen. Or they need to have an open window so I can see what's going on.
Yeah.
And I need to see all of the packages of everything that the robot has in it.
Right. So here's a question on the other side. So you eat, packaged goods, right? That have some sort of a safety protocol in the manufacturing stage, but you aren't walking through the facilities yet. You trust that. So what is that equivalent, or is that different? Is that just more rigorous so you can trust it?
I think we do our due diligence, right, when we're eating packaged foods. I know a lot of people, and I've called companies and I'd say, your statement says this. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that means? So we do, I mean, it is trial and error, right? When you have a packaged food. But the difference is it's trial and error at my house rather than I'm going out for a dinner and I want to have a good time and not feel stressed out. Whereas if I'm trying a new packaged food, I'll do it at home in the morning, knowing that I don't have anything else to do if it's a new thing. I won't try it and then go hiking or something like that. So I think there's a little protocol built around trying new foods that are packaged, and there's a lot of vetting that goes on behind that.
So when you vet, because a lot of companies take, spend a huge amount of money even just in communicating and certifying that they're, safe for whatever allergen or restriction. So even if they write that, are you always calling them and double checking?
No, there's not that many that I would call. I'll read their allergen protocol.
Okay.
I'll see what other products they make beyond the ones that I'm going to eat.
Right.
So if there's not a main contain statement, then I get nervous.
Got it.
And when they haven't bolded their ingredients, I get nervous. It really depends on how they communicate the allergens. That's important to me. And now with everyone having so much information online, that's been really helpful. And it depends on the country that I'm in, because I know that other countries have more relaxed labeling laws, whereas in Europe, they have pretty strong labeling laws. And I trust larger brands a little bit more than smaller one-off brands because they're not as consistent with their labeling.
Right.
And I know that their supply chain changes more than like a larger company would.
Right. And that would make it
And that's just because I've had conversations with these companies of like, oh yeah, our shipment of this didn't come, so we got it from this supplier this time, but our labels didn't change because we printed thousands of them.
Right.
But our product is slightly different. So there's that little thing that makes me nervous about smaller companies.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight. I wouldn't have thought of that just because a lot of the smaller companies tend to make healthier, safer choices, I guess, in theory. But you find that it's there's more to it than that it could get sketchy.
Yeah, I think if they're like specifically an allergy friendly brand, or they're going for some sort of label. So if they're vegan friendly or keto, or if that they're catering to a specific dietary need, then it's a little bit easier. But I don't always want to just eat allergy friendly food.
Yeah.
Because I can eat a lot of food that's not just allergy friendly, but it's those little companies that are not allergy aware or dietary restrictive aware that make me nervous.
Got it. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And Kortney, it's such a huge thing that you're doing, that you're dedicating so much time out of your life to awareness, and you have three different companies pretty much, right? Or like three different communities at least.
Yeah, so Zestfull and the Itch are together. They're two different big brands, but they fall under the same umbrella.
Okay.
But Allergy Travels is just a community that I founded with three other friends.
When did you decide?
Who all love to travel.
Yeah, I'm curious to know a little bit more about the travels, but I want to know first, like, when you decided to dedicate so much time to help others in this community. Yeah, tell me when you first had the thought, like, hey, maybe I'm gonna wear the cape.
I think it was when I first moved to Berlin. I was feeling a little bit isolated. I didn't speak the language at the time. I had just moved. I didn't know anyone. And I think I was using my food allergies as a little bit of a crutch to not go out and explore and to allow myself to feel very reclusive. And my anxiety was just kind of skyrocketing. And so I was just curious what people were doing online, if other adults were feeling the same way as I was. Because at the time, food allergies felt very much like just a children's disease. And it was also really interesting to see that so many kids are developing food allergies. And I went online and I realized that there's a lot of moms and dads talking about the experience, but not enough adults talking about the experience. And I saw a lot of fear in the community. I saw a lot of fear. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, the things that I did when I was younger were crazy. And we just like did things that would give other moms heart attacks nowadays because we know better. But in the 90s, we didn't know.
Yeah.
It was trial and error, like I said. But I saw all of this fear and all of this need to control their child's lives.
Yeah.
And I was like, my parents were not like that. And you need to allow kids to grow and learn how to manage their allergies on their own. We can't micromanage everything. So I kind of became fearful for the younger generation of food allergy kids who might not be getting the independence that they should early on with their allergy management. And so I thought, okay, maybe I'll lend my voice to the community and see what happens. So I started a blog in secret.
Nice.
And then it kind of became therapy. And then I realized I was starting to connect with a lot of people and that there was this gap that was needing some filling.
Yeah.
So I jumped on in and I just found a community that was super supportive. And I just want to help kids these days, try to live the fullest life they can with food allergies and not feel like food allergies have to be the end all be all of who they are.
Right. And do you find that there's generally a cohesiveness to the allergen community, that even if someone has like, let's say they have a dairy allergy and someone has a shellfish allergy, there's still that camaraderie between them? Or is it like, well, this is, you don't understand because shellfish is delicious and I can't eat it?
I think that we know that, if you have to avoid a food because it's life-threatening, then you have to avoid a food, and we're all in that struggle together. Yours might be egg, mine might be peanut, yours might be sunflower, whatever. We're all trying to do the same thing. I think if we want to go there, sometimes there's a little bit of beef between the solo allergy versus the multiple allergy people. But again, at the end of the day, we're all trying to avoid something.
Yeah.
So we're all in it together. But sometimes it's like, well, my child has 18 allergies, so it's way harder.
Yes. Yes.
Don't get petty. Let's just help each other.
A very, very morbid competition.
Right? It's like, you know what? I don't want anyone to have any allergies. So let's just leave it at there.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, well, we see that the numbers are rising and there's all these dietary restrictions. By the way, I wish it wasn't the case. I wish that I didn't have a condition. It's not like, we're trying to perpetuate that. It just exists and we have to deal with it, unfortunately. Exactly. But, who knows where the medical innovations are going to lead. I think everyone is sort of waiting on like the next frontier or a renaissance in medicine for genetics and stuff like that. We've all heard the answer before, like, yeah, if you could adjust the genes, then maybe you could get rid of that. So who knows what's going to happen? I don't know if do you see that as like a light at the end of the tunnel when people talk about gene treatments in the future, or is that just pie in the sky dream?
I think that with this whole vaccine push and this new technology, I feel like we're all becoming a little bit more open to the technology that's available and realizing that we can pinpoint certain things in our bodies that we haven't been able to.
Yeah.
That we can really dive deep into our immune system and see exactly what's being triggered. So I think that there's a lot of places that this is going to go. Maybe in my lifetime, but if it's not in my lifetime, that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think that there's going to be a lot of really cool changes coming soon. The research is starting.
Right. And I know I feel the exact same way. And I think with, if we look at the vaccine, if it was just, a grant of $50 million, let's say, that was given to some university to look at this, when would the vaccine get made? Would it get made in 10 years? Would it get made in 20 years? Right. But because there was so much money thrown at it, it's like, we need to get this done yesterday. And then they ended up getting it done and, in record breaking time. What would happen if we threw that kind of money at any of these other problems, any of these other issues? And what I say quite often is how can we get Uber Eats or DoorDash or any of these big companies
Yeah.
to invest like $100 million in making their experience better for people with dietary restrictions, severe or otherwise. And you know, I sort of feel like a second-class citizen when it comes to these ordering apps, because it's just an afterthought. I mean, it's almost like an insult to injury that they have like, oh yeah, just send a quick note to the restaurant after you've placed the order. Like, great, that's not really going to help. Do you have a beef with these companies that have so much, they're flush with so much cash, but aren't really doing a better job to accommodate, or do you think it's not really in the scope?
Honestly, I personally find that the conversation's really hard to have. It's a trust thing. And I'm coming from the food allergy aspect of like, if you use the wrong spoon, we might have some serious issues.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a trust thing. I need to kind of be there to have that conversation. So using an app, I know I use. It's very exciting. The pandemic was very exciting for me because I order pizza online. Like, this is crazy. Like, this would have never happened if this pandemic didn't happen. And it's like the pizza place that we go to, and so they know who I am.
No doubt.
Write my little like crazy note. I'm just, it's the girl with the sunflower allergy. Do not cut my pizza.
Yeah, this is the girl that threatened you the one time.
Then I like emoji face. Like,
that's so funny.
But I think for me, these apps will never communicate what I feel like I need to communicate, because I don't know who's on the other end. Right. I don't know what they're reading on the ticket. You know, they might be completely swamped and they just see I need to make this and boom, 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 I do it. But they might not notice the allergy warning or something like that. So I think it needs to be built into the protocol of the restaurant.
Right.
So if you know it's the restaurant's protocol, but it's not the app's job. The app is just a communication tool. But it's the restaurant needing to like actually do that protocol.
Mm-hmm.
So it would need to be the app working with every restaurant that they have in their system.
Or at least the ones that want to accommodate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
so I
totally
think that
fair.
would be a really cool conversation to have. Like, how can we get, you know, I don't know, what do you guys have in Canada? We have something called Volt, but like, or Lieferando or Delivery Hero. I don't know what they're in here. And, Uber Eats. We'll say Uber Eats because I think everyone has that.
Yeah.
If they went in and said, if you want to add this like premium or something where you say you're so-and-so certified by us that you can cater to this allergy or this diet, then they go in and they train the people, and you have to have that training, and you always have to have someone in your kitchen who's been trained by you. And then that makes the app liable for knowing that they're this dietary restriction friendly. So I think that would be like a really cool thing. I don't know how many restaurants want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one way to go about it. Actually, in the kosher industry, there's like a rabbi that needs to come, I think, on quite a regular basis to check that everything's in order and so on. I'm not sure if they do that with halal as well, but there is some sort of a model, a protocol that has existed already for these other things that aren't really related to allergies, but you know, we could potentially borrow from their model. So there's definitely some work to be done. But in any case, even if it's just a bunch of money allocated to research and development to find a solution, I think there's a solution out there. The last sort of question that I have for you is that you do travel a lot, and I want our listeners who are maybe hesitant to travel for any reason. I mean, even before COVID, everyone's hesitant because of COVID. But aside from that, if it comes down to dietary restrictions, food allergies, how did you manage it? And can you share an outrageous experience that you never would have thought you would have had when you maybe didn't have the confidence to travel, that you were able to do some fun trip that people wouldn't have thought that you could actually do with food allergies? Or have you done that yet?
I think that
I would say moving across to Europe is pretty damn amazing.
Yeah, that's something. But I don't know. I grew up with traveling, you know. So my parents threw me on a plane at 6 months old, and I've been traveling since.
Right.
So it's always been part of something I do, part of who I am, I guess, as a person, as someone who travels. There are places I don't go to, but it's actually kind of more of an eczema thing than a an allergy thing, because I think like with food allergies, you can always find a way. And I like to always tell people, it doesn't have to be about the food. It's about the experience, about the culture, it's about the vibes, it's about wherever you're going. Like, why do you want to travel? What is it that is making you feel like you need to go to that place? What do you want to see in that place? What do you want to explore?
Right.
If you can eat, that's a bonus. Otherwise, like, just bring a bunch of snacks, or it's a week of eating crackers and smoked salmon for you or something like that. It doesn't have to be about the food. You have to have travel mates who also can accommodate you, so it's like easier said than done, because I know that nowadays everyone wants to travel and try the local cuisine. Like, I feel food has become really the central topic to travel. It's like, oh, you're going there, you have to try this restaurant, or you have to try this food. But there's so much more than just food. So if you change your mindset and you think, I'm going there to experience this culture, I'm going there to see what the streets of the city are like, I'm going there to feel the electric vibes of nightlife or whatever, then traveling is totally possible. I really do think you can make it work. So there's nothing that's necessarily made me think, oh, wow, that was crazy that I did this. But I'm just trying to think. If there's any crazy thing that I've
like
done.
to me, like, have you been to Southeast Asia or something like that?
Yeah, so I have.
Yeah.
This is where I get stopped because I have pretty bad neurodermitis, like eczema.
Okay.
And I flare in the heat.
Oh.
So anything hot and humid, just like my whole body becomes this walking rash.
Oh no.
So I feel like I could do Asia. I could eat like mangoes and rice. That'd be totally cool for me for like a whole week. I'd be totally fine with that. I would just pack a bunch of food and I would just like sit around and watch everyone eat and smell it and then try and recreate it when I get home or something like that. So the food side doesn't bother me so much, but it's also, I have like this big skin problem where I get really uncomfortable, hot and itchy. And
so you're going to Iceland. You're going to Iceland instead of Thailand.
Oh, I love Iceland. Are you kidding me? This is great.
See, I know already. I know.
Me and my husband are like, we like to go north.
That's
like,
fun.
let's just go north.
Yeah. Let's go to Scandinavia for the summer.
Exactly what we do. We're just like, bye, we're going to Denmark.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, let's hit the beaches. We're like no.
Checking in from Siberia. That's funny. Hey, for I guess I was gonna say, like, because people have gone to the Dead Sea in Israel for, like, I don't know, some sort of a natural treatment. Is that legit, or is that? I mean, it's not, because it's gonna be super hot over there. So whatever benefit you get from the water, you might, when you walk out, it might go away.
Yeah, it's the humidity that really kills me. But salt water is great. Salt water is really good. Salt water does wonders.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe it would be a strange payoff. We would have to find out.
Yeah. Well,
that's definitely in the bucket list.
Yeah, no, my friend who has eczema, we went together actually to Israel, and one of the destinations he had to go to was the Dead Sea, just for that benefit. So I don't know, who knows, maybe you'll give us a report one day on that. On your blog. Maybe we can continue the conversation in the future as well. But for now, this is probably great. And I just want people to be able to follow you. So I think going to the Zestfull.com, the TheZestfull.com. That's the best place to reach you, right?
Yeah, that's where I am. You can read a bunch of articles. We have a nice collection of lifestyle, cooking, kind of just how to live a zestful life with food allergies. Don't let your food allergies hold you back from experiencing the zest that this world gives us. And then we also have the Itch podcast, and that's a medical podcast. So it's me and Dr. Payal Gupta, who's an allergist. And we do deep dives into different topics in terms of the atopic world. So allergies, asthma, eczema, immunology. And I'm just like the girl who asks all the questions, who doesn't really know much about it.
Yeah.
But coming from that patient perspective of what you feel like you always want to ask your allergist at your 5-minute appointment, but then your 5 minutes is up and you don't get to ask those questions. We try to do that in that podcast.
Right. So people can probably message you and then you can relay the questions to the doctor.
Yeah, exactly. So we like to do, we call them myth busting questions. So like general questions that people have that they kind of aren't sure about the answer. And they would rather hear it from Dr. Gupta than, do a Google search and then become freaked out about everything.
Yeah, they never Google search, guys. Just avoid that at all costs.
It is a dangerous path. Like Google, you're just gonna think you have every disease on the planet and that you need to go to the hospital right away. Like Google is just fear mongering in my eyes.
It's always like the terminal, fatal, like you don't have too long, life is gonna get horrible, and it's just a headache usually.
Yeah, exactly. You're just pulling things out. Oh, I definitely felt that yesterday. I must have felt that yesterday. That's definitely one of my symptoms.
Yeah. Well, that's something we didn't get to. Maybe we can get to that another time, but it's all the probably fun conversations you might have had with doctors. I know I have had my fair share.
Yeah, exactly. Or like going from a Canadian system to a German system, and the bedside manner is very different. Trying to navigate that.
Is it more harsh?
It was a little bit scattered until I decided that the doctor I like is like an East German woman who's like over 60. I was like, all of my doctors have to fit this criteria because they have an excellent bedside manner. Like they're so nice.
That's funny. If you ever come back to Canada, you're like, find me the German female doctors over 60, please.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, Kortney, it was a pleasure having you on, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, thank you so much.